Good evening, everybody. To your great relief, I'm sure I'm not going to make a speech. Just do want to say, just a reminder really, Maeve made the critical point that at the heart of human rights is the idea of dignity. And the opposite of dignity is contempt. And one really, really potent way of showing contempt for people is to deny them information, particularly information that relates so centrally to their own lives. And the cliche that information is power is a cliche because it's true. And again, the opposite of that is that the denial of information is the imposition of powerlessness. So while I think the importance of this meeting is obvious in professional terms, in institutional terms, in state terms, just to keep in mind that what underlies that is really a struggle for the nature of the republic, of the public realm. We desperately require a public realm that does not treat any of its members with contempt. So I know we've had fantastic presentations all afternoon, and I'm sure there are lots of questions. Can I just ask, because we are pretty limited in terms of time, that you at least frame your statement in the form of a question. Try to keep it as brief as possible. Identify yourself, I think, important as part of the theme of the day. And also, if you would, it would help, I think, if you could direct your question at a particular member of the panel. So thank you very much.
All I can do is apologise if the terminology, the way the form was written and laid out, had excluded adoption. That wouldn't have been the intention. The intention was a broad, open initial consultation to get people's views. So I absolutely take that feedback on board and will feed it into the ongoing cycles of engagement. Thank you. So what I can say by way of response is that the government took a decision based on all of the recommendations to a national memorial to locate it in Sean McDermott Street, and a commitment that they would consult in the development of it. So I'm sorry that I don't think I can probably give you an answer over and above the fact that the government, in making the announcement, has committed to ongoing consultation in the development of the National Centre. It has committed that it will have local and global outreach in terms of engaging with survivors globally and in other parts of Ireland. And it has very much committed and adheres absolutely that the National Centre, regardless of location, that it's absolutely essential, that it's recognising all affected persons, to use Claire's term, thank you, and is ensuring that there's the opportunity for those that want to engage in an equal way in co-creation. I think back to those fundamental points on identity, ownership, dignity. What I would say is that absolutely this site of conscience, there is an opportunity here to co-create, to say how your experience should be reflected, how, to take ownership of the language in which your experience is going to be represented in the National Centre, if you wish it to be. The opportunity to co-create and the opportunity to develop this centre in a way that it is delivering on those things we've heard around a right to access and survivors having that paramount say on their records. So the intention is that this National Centre, there is an opportunity now at this moment to do that in a co-creation way. I hope that helps and goes some way to answering the concerns raised. Thank you.
Katrina?
Just to respond to Michelle's, just an element of what Michelle said there, and I absolutely agreed about the exclusion of people from the scheme and on the fact that we should always have had access in the first place. But I would caution against, and this is going to sound a bit funky, but I would caution against mobilising psychological theory in this area. This is about equal human and civil rights for all of us. We shouldn't have to, and I don't mean that as a rebuke to you, Michelle, by any stretch of the imagination, but, we shouldn't have to prove how much we need X, Y, or Z. Our identities were taken. We were taken from our families. We were incarcerated. We were, whatever each person's, situation is. And we shouldn't have to mobilise psychological theories or traumas in order to achieve that. It should simply be given as a matter of course, because by forcing us down the path of mobilising psychological theories, we are doing further damage. Just one very brief thing. What I would say to everybody who is, I completely appreciate the frustration at not being consulted. I completely and utterly appreciate it. But what I would say is that as a person who feels like they're not going to be represented within the official record, I'd encourage us all to try and be part of it, but on our own terms. Let's insist on it being done right. But, I would encourage people to, because the important part of history is not just about having what happened to us acknowledged, but it's preventing what's happening in the present from happening again, because, we are, look at children coming out of state care at the moment. History is repeating itself. And those of you who are in industrial schools, you have important things to tell the state in the present day about that. And I just think it's important. And I think it would be a shame not to have that as part of the official record. So I understand your frustrations, but I would encourage you to wholeheartedly try to be part of the record. That's all I'd say. But I absolutely hear your frustrations.
Thanks very much.
It was very mixed, the response to our proposal, if you like. So we had quite polarised responses. A lot of the time when we got the representatives in the room and to talk to them, we'd shown them around the archive prior to that, so they'd got a feeling for what we do and how important the importance we place on the work that we do and the importance of the preservation. And I think there's a really important piece with people to get them thinking about these records in a different way. They're not just the papers that we use every day. There are things that need to be cared for in the right way. But on top of that, there were of course individuals who are a lot more responsive to that and a lot more willing to be understanding of what we were trying to do. Played it very much from the preservation of the documents and the importance of keeping this information safe and the fact that they're so vulnerable and at risk in a lot of the places where they're being held at the moment. So, but as I say, it was a mixed response, and although it was probably more, we got a better response than we expected to from most, yeah. But thank you.
Thanks, Joy. No, we wanted to make sure that, first and foremost, we understand from the organisations that we're not there to condone or judge what has gone on in those institutions or organisations. We're there to preserve the record so that people here or next generation can access that information from an archival perspective. We were mindful not to be seen to be, again, colloquially, too chummy with depositing organisations. Again, we're sort of keeping that professional distance to say we are archivists, records managers. We're here to preserve the archival information. which is critical to affected people. This is their information, and it's, again, knowing what we know. We've seen information. Those affected people have not seen that information, but we need to make sure that they can, under the legislation, whatever that may be, can at least see that down the line, hopefully. But as I say, it's about building bridges, building relationships, as you say, Katrina, not, of course, there had to be an initial letter written to the organisations to ask them to meet, to discuss this, to do a survey of their record. And then from that, building that relationship to say, we are people as well, like you. We are not faceless bureaucrats who don't care. We definitely do care about what has happened to people and making sure that they can access the information about their very being and who they are. So that's very important. So that's from our archival perspective.
Thank you for your question. I would say that, as I said in the talk that I gave earlier, the Act, coupled with the data from the archival survey, was, the real basis of all those conversations. And the archival survey was able to be done on the back of that legislation, really, because we had to have a reason why we were going in and asking to see the records. So, we were able to say, this Act has been passed, you have to comply with this, so therefore we want you to show us what you have, where you store it. We were able to list the condition and take things from there. When the conversations began then with the representatives and we invited them into Prony, that was one of their major concerns, obviously, so the Act itself just goes as far as saying these records cannot be disposed of or destroyed or taken out with the jurisdiction. So we had to really talk about the benefit it would be to create another surrogate copy of this, to have it held with us. But as you rightly say, at the minute, those records are closed access because the way the legislation stands as it is, those records are still, they're still the record controller. They're still the one who says whether or not access can be given to those records. So that's where we are at the moment. But it's not for me to say really what's going to happen legislatively in the future. And we hope that things will change positively for everybody, who's so fully, it matters so much to them and their own stories. And, we want to work with those people and do everything we can to provide as much access as we can. But as I say, that needs to be legislated for. We're archivists. We're doing our part to try and get the things safe. So, we'll keep working at that as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Wesley, did you want to add anything to that briefly?
Very quickly, sorry. Our position is in Prony that we want to be as open and as transparent as possible. Now, within the legal frameworks that we operate under. However, with those private records, as Joy says, they are private deposits. But again, at least they are being permanently preserved in the National Archive. That cannot be. They are in our digital repository, and they cannot be removed. And the depositors are aware of that. We can't delete. There's no delete button on our digital repository. They're there for forever. So that's a big plus in making sure that this information is not lost. There's no malicious person out there going to delete or destroy the records tonight. They're with Prony, so that's a good thing. And that hopefully will go some way to move the conversation forward to say, okay, let's discuss access and how that can be. We can't get everything agreed tonight about how all this will work out, but at least they're preserved, and that's our main goal in June 2024.
Thank you very much. Maeve, you gave us a absolutely brilliant exploration of the legal landscape that really defines all of this. Obviously, you did it so brilliantly that there are no questions whatsoever still remaining. But I wonder, have you any further reflections on what you've heard subsequently?
Yeah, thank you so much. It just occurs to me that a huge amount of trust needs to be built between everybody who is going to be affected and interested in the future National Centre. And I also think it's going to take a long time. The best case scenario is 5 years, but we all know that these things can sometimes take a little longer, and hopefully that won't be the case. But I mentioned in my presentation that there's a lot of law, and Michelle makes the valid point that we have laws in this country to protect your right to access your personal data, to ensure access to state records. And what could be done in the meantime is for the government to build that trust by actually doing something to implement those existing obligations now, to show that it recognises people's rights to their personal data by actually guiding and providing practical assistance to make those subject access requests to not just the Department of Children, which has done extremely welcome work, but the Ryan Commission Archive, the Redress Board, the Residential Institutions Redress Committee, the Magdalene's Archive, given that's also held in the Department of Children, and of course all of the non-state religious and other bodies that are obliged to vindicate GDPR rights right now. And the state has obligations to supervise that. So there's just so much that could be done there. And equally on freedom of information. Of course, the FOI Act doesn't apply in general terms to historical records, but it does where access to those records is essential to understanding modern day documents and information. So much more could be done there. And then I really do think there is that need for the emergency preservation of records legislation. The 2002 Birth Information and Tracing Act has welcome provisions which show that it can be done. You mentioned them, Laura, and that relates, of course, to adoption and early life information. It doesn't go into the realm of administrative records generally, and it doesn't cover those institutional experiences such as Magdalene, Laundries, that fall outside its remit. So that really is a gap that needs to be filled ASAP. There's just no point in going and meeting the religious orders without that power, I don't personally think. So thank you so much. Thanks to everybody.
Thanks a million, Niamh. I'm going to hand over to Katrina to sum up. I think the hope, surely from today, is that it will be a stimulus to government to recognise, first of all, the appalling situation in which existing law is not being applied, just in the most obvious ways. So far as I know, the Statutory Advisory Committee on Archives no longer actually exists. It's the last one's term of office ended and a new one has not been appointed. I mean, this is just, why? We know that there are still local authorities who have not even fulfilled their basic obligations to have an archivist. So as Maeve says, acting on existing law at every level would seem to be the most obvious demand. But also to me, extremely interesting to get the experience from Northern Ireland of how a coercive piece of legislation actually sometimes means you don't have to coerce anybody. Actually having the legislation there means that people have an incentive to cooperate and understand what their obligations are. And secondly, also hugely interesting from Laura to hear about the extent to which the existing legislation, even if it is too narrow, is working. There is a model there. It shows, in fact, how some of the very valid concerns and complexities can be overcome, and legislation can actually be implemented. So it seems to me, at least, that the political agenda is pretty clear to government. Implement existing law and bring in a little bit of coercion, which might in turn have the beneficial effect of encouraging the kind of cooperation which is absolutely essential to ensuring the fundamental basic human rights of people. I think, as you were saying, Claire, this is ultimately not about technical questions, legal questions. It's fundamentally about the equality of citizens, of all citizens, to be treated with respect rather than with the contempt that so many of our citizens have been treated in the past. Thanks very much, Katrina.
Thank you, Fintan. It's my pleasant duty, as they say, to thank all the people who need to be thanked for getting today together. I want to thank all of our speakers and chairs, Niamh Brennan, who came all the way from Donegal to tell us about the local archives up there, Felix Larkin and Kieran Casey, Lisa Godson and Maria Luddy, James Smith and Maeve O'Rourke. I'm exhausted now, so forgive me if I skip anybody. Leanne McCormack, Wesley and Joy from the north. Marvellous to see you here and to learn so much from you. Laura, thank you for coming. I know you've had a tough time this afternoon, and it's great that you stayed and stayed with us. Patricia Carey and Claire McGettrick, born Lorraine Hughes, who has taught us a new term that we should all adopt and who gave an amazing presentation. I really want to thank my two moderators, Diarmuid and Fintan, for doing such a great job and paying such attention to what was going on. I want to thank the working group that got this all together. Mary O'Dowd, Lisa Godson, Maeve, and Ciara Brannock before she had to leave, Felix Larkin and Kelly Fitzgerald, and particularly Martha Fitzgerald, who was our absolutely wonderful program manager, who did everything she needed to do and more on top of it, and has been one of the most pleasant individuals you could possibly want to deal with. I want to thank my good friend Noel Brown, who's here somewhere, who has been an absolute source of wisdom and advice and support to me throughout the entire process, and who I'm very glad is here today. And I want to thank Mark O'Connor and the team at Media Mill for filming and video production today, Rachel at the Good Food Store for the catering, and all of the RIA staff who have supported the event today, especially Stephen McMahon, Martina Whelan, Niamh Dowdall, and Sharon O'Connor. And last, to say to all of you, Martha will be sending out a feedback form to you all after today's event. Fill it out and send it back to her. If you didn't get your ticket through booking in the normal way, you can email us at info@ria.ie and tell us what your feedback is, and we would really like to get that from you. So thanks very much, everyone. There's a glass of wine waiting in the room down the hall. Come and join us for that. And thank you all so much for coming today. Bye.